We are in right now what's known as solar maximum, and this will continue all the way through 2024, 2025, and even into 2026. Now what this means is that overall light energy output from the sun is higher than it is during solar minimum. And this is because when the sun's magnetic field flips, and right now we are at the middle of that flip, the most chaotic period, there is more light that is emitted from the sun, and that supercharges the entire solar system and our planet Earth. Now, one of the other effects of solar maximum is that in general, you have more solar flares and you have more coronal mass ejection, solar storms, and as a result, geomagnetic storms, aurora, and all those other energetic phenomena that occur. Right now, we have a wave that is stacked on top of all this because we have a new, very large sunspot group right now that is growing rapidly, and it will be Earth direct center bullseye right around Thanksgiving. And so this is quickly looking like a big flare player, and as it rotates through Earth center strike zone, if it does have a very significant solar explosion, that could launch a solar storm directly at us at this moment in time where the overall light energy output from the sun is greatest, and we are in a grand maximum period. And so this is multiple waves of energy stacked on top of each other across different frequencies of time. And this is a big energetic push that in general we are going through right now, which I'm going to break down for you in this video, starting with this sunspot and the growth of it, but then looking at solar cycles overall, the light energy changes that occur from solar minimum to solar maximum, and then the grand maximum period that we are in, because all of this affects the Earth geophysically, energetically, and that then influences the biosphere and our evolution. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, I'm your space weatherman, Stefan Burns. Here we talk about solar activity, Earth geophysics, and the energies on our planet, also of the solar system, the cosmos. And we look at this from a scientific perspective. We also look at this from a spiritual perspective, how these things are changing and affecting us. I bring all that together and synthesize it for you with videos almost daily. So if you like the sound of that, then please subscribe. The best way to watch my channel is to watch the videos as they come out. And eventually, once you watch enough of them, you'll get all that information together. So here we have our latest intensigram image of the Earth-facing side of the sun showing sunspots. And this is actually a video. I'll hit play so we can see the growth there of this sunspot cluster. This is 2 sunspots. So it's not just 3905, it's also 3906 here down at the bottom. So you have 3905 right there, 3906, really just one big sunspot cluster, one big area of flux pushed out of the sun. And you can see that it's just now rotating off of the eastern limb right here. And it takes about 6 days from this position to get to where 3901 is, which is Earth center direct bullseye. This sunspot group right here doesn't look that significant, hasn't been flaring that much. It was flaring more over here, and so it's unlikely to do anything super dramatic, but it is in that location. So that's one to watch over the next 24 to 48 hours. But this group right here, 3905 and 3906, will be in this Earth strike zone around Thanksgiving, so Thursday, Friday or so, and that could perhaps line up with some really significant solar activity at that time. So let's hit play on this so we can see the growth of it, because that is really the most telling thing. It's been growing so fast just over the past 24 hours. We see 3905 rotate in, 3906 a little bit rotated, and then look at the growth that occurred just in like the past 12 hours. So a tremendous amount of energy being pushed out of this sunspot group. We went from this kind of period of low solar activity with these guys and sunspots dropping all the way down to 70 on the Earth facing side to now all of a sudden a big flare player just 6 days away from Earth center direct. This very well could be a sunspot cluster that produces these really powerful X-class flares. We're not talking X1, X2, though that is of course in the cards, but I'm talking like X7, X9, even perhaps beyond that. It has the requisite characteristics and size, magnetic complexity, unusual polarity because of the way the negative and positive polarities are sandwiched together. Very bizarre, growing rapidly. That is this temporary variation in solar activity that we have right now. Sunspots in general, as they go across, will increase the amount of X-ray radiation that we receive here on Earth, just being emitted out into the solar system in general. And so when you have more sunspots on the sun, like during solar maximum, you have more X-rays. In fact, we can look at the entire solar spectra to understand how light energy from the sun changes from solar minimum to solar maximum, to better understand how that changes the energies here on our planet and also just our reality framework. Here we have a combined data graphic showing the light spectrum of the sun going from the radio microwave frequencies all the way to extreme ultraviolet and X-ray frequencies. So it's nearly the entire light spectrum. It is missing, for example, like the extremely low frequency part of the light spectrum. That'd be like 0 to 100 hertz or so. It is also missing the gamma ray frequency of the light spectrum. That is extremely weak because those are typically just produced during very powerful solar flares. But this is nearly everything, and it shows the variability in this spectrum across time. If you want this data graphic, you can go to my Twitter X account at Stefan Burns Geo. So here is our main light spectrum. We have infrared here, visible, ultraviolet, extreme ultraviolet, and then X-ray. And so we see that the bulk of the solar irradiance is concentrated in the ultraviolet and visible in terms of its highest intensity, though the majority is actually stored in infrared. The sun can be approximated to about a 6,000 Kelvin black body. And so it will peak in this infrared visible ultraviolet spectrum, whereas, for example, a B-class star, a B-type, will peak more in the ultraviolet and X-ray range, much more highly vibrational. But our sun has this normal solar distribution of energy there. Now, what we see is that the sun also emits extreme ultraviolet light. This is ionizing light that can break molecular bonds, and it also emits X-rays. And so we see our scale here, quite a big difference. This is 10 to the 6. This is all the way 0.1 for our solar irradiance, and then even lower. So you can see the extreme variability going from most of the energy concentrated in ultraviolet, visible, and infrared to these more highly vibrational wavelengths of light. And then if I step over here, you'll also see that our radio frequencies change depending on where we are in the solar cycle. So this is again our black body, but what we see is that the sun has this increase in radio microwave frequencies, whether it's solar minimum, the blue line, or solar maximum, the red line. We also have here a high resolution look at the light spectrum going from 100 to 500 nanometers. And so this is right in this range here, and then specifically a subset there going from 100 to 170 nanometers, which shows Lyman alpha radiation, that spike there, which corresponds to that spike right there. And so as you go up in frequency after ultraviolet, you do have overall less energy emitted from the sun at those frequencies. But what you'll notice with this green line is that the variability increases dramatically. And so there's a greater change across a solar cycle in these more highly vibrational wavelengths of light. X-ray has the highest, and then extreme ultraviolet light has a very high variability. We see that right here. Whereas there's very low variability in the ultraviolet, visible, and infrared part of the light spectrum. And so that is relatively unchanged going from solar minimum to solar maximum. But these other frequencies of light are changed. The extremely vibrational ones, like again mentioned here, also gamma rays, they are produced more often during solar maximum because you have those most powerful solar flares that do occur. Then also our radio frequencies, they also undergo significant changes from solar minimum to solar maximum. Now this is important because we see based on biophysics that radio frequencies of light do interact with us bioelectrically. They influence DNA and cell behaviors and so much more, like cellular voltage gradients, a whole bunch of stuff. They have rich biologic interactions. Then we also know that, of course, ionizing radiation has also rich biologic interactions because it can cause DNA breaks and ionize things and cause cell damage, and that triggers then a stress response and a healing response and all that. You don't want to get blasted by gamma rays, right? That's how a lot of people die during like a nuclear blast, for example, or a meltdown. It's because they receive too much gamma ray radiation and they just can't repair themselves at the molecular and cellular level. So when the sun goes from solar minimum to solar maximum, we are receiving both at the same time more of these biologically relevant radio microwave frequencies, which do penetrate all the way down to the ground very easily. But we also receive more of these highly vibrational wavelengths of light, and those are primarily absorbed into the upper atmosphere of the Earth. This would be the ionosphere, also some layers slightly deeper than that, like closer towards us. But what that means is that you have this light energy coming in, and it is just breaking molecular bonds and just creating greater variability and charge in our actual energetic system overall. And that stands to reason to have pretty strong effects on the biosphere and all of Earth in general. So let's talk more about the energy that's contained within different parts of the light spectrum. Not only do we have that new big sunspot cluster that is on the Earth-facing side of the sun right now and rotating to Earth center bullseye right for around Thanksgiving, we also are in solar maximum overall, which means that there is just in general a greater amount of energy being output from the sun. Total solar irradiance is higher during a maximum than it is during a minimum, and we are also in a grand maximum. So you have these longer term variations in solar activity. For example, we had the Maunder minimum about 300 years ago. And so overall solar energy output was even lower then than during, for example, one of these solar minimum periods here. We are in a period for the past 100 years of very heightened solar activity and greater solar energy output. We saw how from solar maximum to solar minimum, you have changes in the light spectra of the sun, more concentrated in those most vibrational frequencies, extreme ultraviolet, X-ray, even gamma, then also in the more biologically relevant lower frequency radio frequency band. And so we see here the power of a photon across the light spectrum. We have extremely low frequency light there. This is like 3 to 30 hertz or so. And then up top we have gamma rays. Right there is visible light. And so this is all non-ionizing, though it still has energy. Then you have visible light, and then you have ionizing light above it. And this has higher energy. You see that a gamma ray photon can be about 1 mega electron volt in strength, which is significant, can break thousands of molecular bonds. Whereas down here, it's just a very, very small amount. I mean, this is a pico electron volt. I think this is like a FEMA, but it's incredibly low. But we still have that energy coming in across a variety of ways. But primarily the sun is the big energy outputter in our solar system. And so during this modern maximum period, we have overall greater light energy output from the sun, probably across the infrared, visible, and ultraviolet spectrum in general, because that's where the bulk of the light energy is, but definitely across those higher vibrational and lower vibrational parts on either side. Then we have solar maximum right now stacked on top of that, and now we have the sunspot cluster that's really big, rotating in, also increasing the more highly vibrational wavelengths of light. And so the way I see that is that we have just this light energy coming in, specifically like the X-ray and the extreme ultraviolet light coming in, breaking these molecular bonds up in the uppermost atmosphere of our planet, causing greater ionization. And so the ionosphere becomes more charged. But instead of looking at the global electric circuit, you could just look at what's happening at the molecular and at the atomic scale. So you have these atoms, which are typically like bonded together. They have some sort of resonance together and they move through space-time together, right? They have these molecular bonds that kind of fix them in position. They're sharing electrons together, and that's what keeps them kind of in this coherent unit. Then you have all this highly vibrational light come in, and it breaks apart that coherence, strips a lot of these electrons off, and creates all these new individual particles that have now more agency to themselves. But what happens is that you create this plasma, and what we see is actually a lot of coherence among plasma. And so you have more individual energetic charge up in the ionosphere because you have these molecules broken apart, but then you have greater coherence on the whole because you're creating plasma, and now this plasma can flow together and create these extremely powerful electric currents, which we know have geophysical effects down lower in the Earth energy onion, as I call it, right? They induce telluric currents in the lithosphere. They've been connected to earthquakes. We know it influences the global electric circuit and atmospheric conditions down below. A rich body of research on that. But just thinking about the actual energetic qualities of these molecules in the uppermost part of our atmosphere, in our plasmasphere, where a lot of these ions are charged, we now have a bunch of extremely energetic protons in our radiation belts. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But we have a lot more, you could say, individuality and freedom amongst all these different particles. And with general resonance theory, and it's increasingly accepted by a lot of researchers into the field of consciousness, is that everything has consciousness, even down to a particle. It's just an inherent part of reality. Anything that vibrates has consciousness. I very much believe that. And there's more and more people that study into consciousness that are now really going in that direction because it just makes a lot of sense if you study into it. And so solar maximum and this grand maximum in general is just creating so much more free agency and variability and some chaos, but greater ability to change and morph, because now with all these particles separated, they can now bond in new ways that before they could not do because they were locked in a molecular bond that required a certain amount of energy to break. This light photon comes in, let's say it's an X-ray photon, it comes in and it resonates with an electron in its own kind of dynamic and causes it to then upgrade, right? It's now supercharged and breaks that whole thing apart. And so that's what I also see happening right now on our planet with the movement of Pluto into Aquarius. And now also in about 100 years, the age of Aquarius will start as the sun will start to rise in the constellation of Aquarius during the equinox, the March equinox. We are shifting into this period of greater individualization, but at the same time, greater collective force, where people are stepping into their own sovereign power, following their higher spirit, self-actualizing, doing what's best for the planet and for just energy and consciousness overall, right? Very much in resonance with the fact that we are in a greater light environment. There's more light now on the planet that there has been in a long time. We had all these minimums here. Check it out. We did have this medieval maximum. This data, of course, you could stretch back millions and millions of years, but we are now in this modern maximum period. Here it is right there. And it's predicted by some that we are going to enter into an even greater maximum period in the future, as we see with this data there. So there's our modern minimum, and we've been on this ascending phase now for a while. So the light energy output from the sun's been increasing and increasing and increasing for centuries now. Let us not forget that. That is a big wave that we have been riding on top of, and now we are really riding on top of it with solar cycle 25 maximum, which was 2 times stronger than predicted, coming off of that low with solar cycle 24, which was anomalously weak. We see it right there. And so that dip back into a lower light vibrational environment allows us to have greater perspective as we now really push forward to a much greater degree. And then when you have solar activity stacked on top of that, like from really big sunspots, and then strong solar flares, coronal mass ejections, solar storms, geomagnetic storms, all the things that then occur downstream of that, it is just that cherry on top of the entire thing. So tremendous amount of light energy coming into our planet right now, tremendous opportunity to work with that, to really embody that and to be that light energy at this moment in time. And it's all supported, as I see it, by the scientific data. Just over the past few days, we've had a very powerful radiation storm here on Earth. We now see that stimulus has ended and that energy coming in from the solar wind has now ceased. That was originally triggered by a very powerful explosion on the far side of the sun back on the 21st of November. We see our proton flux shoot up dramatically, took us to an S2 level What was so interesting about this radiation storm was that it bumped up even the most highly vibrational protons too. So the ones traveling closest to the speed of light, for example, 500 mega electron volts, 100 mega electron volts, they shot up significantly. We also saw even stronger enhancements of helium, going up like 5 orders of magnitude. So now you have alpha particles, right? You have 2 protons, 2 neutrons, things like that. Electrons also went up. So it's not just a proton radiation storm, it was a radiation storm overall. So this is measured by the GOOS satellite at 5.6 Earth radii, geostationary satellites. So it's fixed in location. So we see that our proton flux coming in from the solar wind has now dropped. But keep in mind, the radiation environment for the Earth typically does not house protons at 5.6 Earth radii. That's the outer radiation belt, which is electron dominant. Protons naturally accumulate in the inner radiation belt, going from about 1 to 3 Earth radii. And so this shows the enhancement of protons in the outer radiation belt because they're coming in initially from the solar wind. This doesn't mean this proton storm is over though. Now that we've dropped down, it just means that they've finally moved in closer to the planet. They are now in the inner radiation belt. That is very much supercharged at this moment in time, and they can now begin precipitating down deeper into our planet, for example, into the ionosphere and into the atmosphere from around 50 to 80 kilometers up, because in the inner radiation belt is where you have your L slot, where you have natural ion precipitation that occurs due to atmospheric lightning activity and other sources of ELF and ULF waves. So when you have a lightning strike, you create these radio frequencies that then propagate out, and they cause electrons and protons and other ions to precipitate down due to wave particle interactions. It's quite complicated, but all these protons now, even these 500 mega electron volt protons, which can break thousands and thousands and thousands of molecular bonds, are now in our inner radiation belt, and that energy is already being applied now. It's really going to start though over the next few days, and that takes some time to eventually filter down into the geophysical system, and that big sunspot cluster will be rotating Earth center direct. Again, it's going to be there right around Thanksgiving. So we are still very much in a very big charging environment right now. It takes time for that energy to get down. You could be feeling that. And I wanted to point out that this is not just like a 2-day thing, right? This isn't over in just 24 hours. It takes a while for that to unfold. And so if you'd like to stay appraised, I will keep you up to date. Just subscribe to the channel. Here we have our coronagraph view, and we can see a few different things with this. There is our massive far side explosion that occurred November 21st. All those speckles that showed up, that is that radiation storm first hitting this sensor at the L1 point, eventually reaching Earth as well. We also, in our coronagraph, see a tiny little comet here discovered just in the past few days. I've been reporting on this, and sad to say, it has now been incinerated by the sun. So our little friend there was not strong enough to survive. It's perihelion. It is a sun grazer. This outline there is the sun. It was going to get really close before swinging around. Just was not strong enough and massive enough to make it around. But the interesting thing that we've seen now 3 times is comets getting in close to the sun and big solar activity at the same time. And this is just in the past 2 months. We had comet Shu-Chen-Shan, and then we had another comet that flew in, also got incinerated, larger than this one, and then this now tiny little guy doing the same thing. But all 3 of them have been temporally connected to heightened solar activity, these really big solar flares and destabilized plasma filaments and all these sort of things. And so my general rule of thumb is that if you see something once, it's not a trend, it's just a one-time thing. See something twice, it may be a trend, but it's really easy to like draw a line between any 2 points. But if you can draw a line between 3 points, right, they're all in alignment, then you have something to it. So there definitely seems to be a connection between comets and solar activity that goes beyond just a temporal connection, though the mechanism of action that is, I can't, with any certainty make a statement on that. Could be gravity-based, could be electromagnetic. I think it's more likely to be the latter, but 3 in a row now in 2 months with these comets and extreme solar activity. Of course, you can expect heightened solar activity during solar maximum, but in general, kind of unusual thing occurring. We have that big new sunspot cluster rotating into the strike zone soon. So we'll see if we get any more of these sort of solar explosions, but instead from the Earth facing side, we could have some really big solar storm impacts coming, and as a result, big geomagnetic storms and more energy flux overall. That is certainly in the cards. So if you'd like to stay appraised and prepared, then please subscribe. One of the other big modifiers to the energies that we experience here on Earth is water. And so you have solar activity, you have cosmic energies, you have solar wind, and how all that is then being fed into the Earth. You have Earth's magnetic field, so it's guiding and rerouting that energy. You have the global electric circuit. You also just have water itself. Each water molecule is a mini magnet. It has a polarity to it. And so there are these electrodynamic properties to water. They form these larger coherency domains that are able to actually capture onto light energy across almost the entire light spectrum, preserve that information. A ton of experiments have been done into that. Emoto's work, and also water capturing and like displaying thought forms and such. So really, really incredible. And right now we have a lot of water on our planet because we've burned a lot of fossil fuels and emitted a ton of water into the atmosphere. And so we have more water overall on our planet than we've had over the past 100, 200, 300, 400 years, for example. And every degree that you go up, you have greater water holding capacity in the atmosphere. And we are seeing bigger changes in our atmospheric systems overall because of the greater variability right now in our climate and overall Earth electrification as well. I've talked about that before. So here we have North America. Just for the past few days, we see total precipitation. What you'll notice here are these dual bomb cyclones that formed off the coast of North America. And so they are just now starting to peter out. Really beautiful, almost makes like a yin-yang shape, which I think is super cool. You see this atmospheric river coming in. One of the subscribers who is in this area, she discussed and shared how she felt that the rain actually felt like it had a different frequency to it, very much of like the violet flame of purification. And there's a lot of truth to that because water is taking in this solar energy. This occurred during that radiation storm. And we know that water can capture and preserve the energy and information that is imprinted with. And when you have strong storms pass overhead, whether it's an electrified rain cloud or you have like an actual thunderstorm or cyclones, that also is changing the entire electromagnetic background field, specifically in the extremely low frequency spectrum. We see the Schumann resonances increase in their power even from just rainstorms. And the Bay Area here, specifically the North Bay, has had 20 inches of rain in just a few days. So setting a record there, tremendous amounts of water being dropped. As a result, a tremendous amount of energy and information. And it stands to reason that a lot of that has been imprinted with these solar energies because of that proton radiation storm that we had. You can think about the symbolism, how it came from the far side of the sun. So not from the sun that we're seeing, but from the other side, the dark side, you could say, of the sun. That part of our consciousness that we're not necessarily connected to, but still exists, shot out this blast of energy and information. And some parts of the planet are receiving that energy and information in greater degrees. Specifically, the Bay Area there is receiving a tremendous amount because apparently they need that solar consciousness and energy and that illumination of their subconscious, because again, the far side of the sun. So just some interesting interpretations I'm making off of that. We do have some other systems that are developing here, and so I'll keep you appraised. And so the other thing that I'd like to remind you of is that earthing and grounding is the best thing you can do at this moment in time to help you stay equalized in your energies and to surf these energy waves. We are not only in that grand maximum period, we are in solar maximum overall for solar cycle 25, and we are having these regular rhythms of very strong solar activity from sunspots on the Earth facing side, solar storm impacts, all that and more. And so connecting yourself to the potential of the Earth energetically feet on grass, feet on ground, right? That's the best way. Your feet are highly conductive. A lot of free nerve endings terminate in your feet. Your hands are also very conductive. You can even just lay out. This will help you to equalize your potential to that of the earth. It harmonizes your biorhythms, also takes you into a different frequency environment. So you're going from, let's say, an electromagnetic polluted area to a more natural area that has just in general less electrosmog and more of these natural electromagnetic frequencies like the Schumann resonances. The signal to noise ratio is different. And so again, the best way to practice grounding is bare feet on ground. Asphalt will not work, but concrete still will. But grass ideally is best, like wet grass is the most conductive. It's all about conductivity. But if you want to be grounding more often in your day-to-day while you're out doing chores, you're walking around, whatever, I have earthing shoes available for you. These are the men's right here. This is burgundy, looks awesome, really looks quite nice. I need to get a pair of the burgundy for myself. They are completely flat. They have a 0 toe drop, wide toe box for natural foot splay. This is water buffalo. So this is a natural material that is still very durable, but it is also conductive. And so it does have that copper plug at close to the K1 meridian point, but the entire sole is conductive. And so you can be out day to day and be connected to the earth to a greater degree by wearing these shoes. I also have them in women's. These are very nice as well. They're pretty easy to slip on. Again, totally flat, 0 toe drop, wide toe box. Great for improving your posture, the strength and health of your feet. So if they are your way to connect to the earth, you're not gonna have a healthy connection if your feet aren't healthy. And so there can be sometimes a bit of a learning curve and perhaps a little bit of adjustment needed for your feet to strengthen them. But these shoes will help you with that, and you can wear them in your more day-to-day. When, let's say, you're out shopping or something like that, going to the grocery store, be grounding more often as a result, and that in general improves your bioelectric status and just your state of being, connects you to these energies to a greater degree, and I find that to be very helpful, for, at least for me, for my spiritual evolution process. I very much feel much more aligned in all my soul purpose life mission path when I'm grounding and earthing regularly, and that took a dramatic shift when I actually made that into a lifestyle. And so you could look back to, let's say, like 2018, 2019, you know, I was kind of doing it, I was interested, but not really. Now in 2024, this is like my thing, right? I'm practicing this all the time, and my life is dramatically changed as a result. So N=1 with myself, but a lot of people have spoken to that. A lot of people have the shoes already. They love them. So you can check them out, wildfreeorganic.com, available for you there. I hope you appreciate that. And again, the best way to practice grounding is bare feet on ground, but it's also important to be grounding more often. That's why these shoes are so valuable. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you appreciated this video today. Smash that like button if you did enjoy it, and subscribe if you haven't already. You know, today we went in depth into the energies of the sun and how this interacts with the earth and consciousness overall. And so this is a good video to share with anyone that wants to have a better understanding of some of the more spiritual aspects of solar activity and solar maximum, and just the phase that we are in with solar activity over longer time scales, backed up by science. So happy to support you with that. Happy to be here now in this Pluto and Aquarius era, and really, you know, following along my own Aquarian journey and empowering others through this channel. So yeah, just wanted to give my thanks and appreciation for all of you, because you are the other half of this equation that makes it all work. So thank you all so much. God bless. Namaste. I'll see you all in the next video.